Welcome back, dear friends, to your daily dose of ancient wisdom. Today we continue our reading of Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana, Tritiya Skandha or Book 3, Discourse 31, which talks about the stages of growth of a human embryo. The Lord resumed, by the force of karma or destiny, as directed by the providence, the soul destined to be born as a man enters the womb of a woman through the generative fluid of a man for the formation of a body. In the course of a night, it is integrated by being united with ovum, and in 5 nights, it is rounded into the shape of a bubble. In the period of 10 days, it becomes as hard as a plum, and later on it develops into the shape of a ball of flesh or an egg in the case of oviparous creatures. In the course of a month, a head is formed, and at the end of 2 months, hands, feet, and other limbs take shape. By the end of 3 months, the nails on the fingers and toes, the hair on the body, bones, and skin appear, as also the organ of generation and the other apparatus in the body, those of eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus form. In as many as 4 months, the 7 essential ingredients of the body, namely chyle, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and semen, come into being, while at the end of 5 months, hunger and thirst make themselves felt. In the course of 6 months, the fetus is enclosed by an embryo and begins to move in the right side of the abdomen or in the left if it is a female. Deriving its nutrition from the food and drinks taken by the mother, the fetus grows and remains in that abdominal receptacle of feces and urine, the breeding place of worms. Bitten again and again all over the body by the hungry worms in the abdomen itself, the creature suffers terrible agony on account of its tenderness and swoons away moment after moment. Nay, adversely affected by the bitter, pungent, hot, salt, dry, acid, and other such irritating substances consumed by its mother, the fetus experiences a painful sensation in every part of the body. Enclosed by the amnion and turned towards the belly, and with its back and neck arched like a bow, unable to move its own limbs like a bird which cannot freely move in a cage, the creature in the womb finds its memory awakened by the will of Providence and recollects its doings committed during hundreds of previous lives and feels suffocated for a long time. What peace of mind can it have under such circumstances? The fetus, though endowed with consciousness from the 7th month of its conception, is tossed by the winds that press the embryo downwards during the weeks preceding delivery and cannot remain at one place like the worm born of feces is in the same abdominal cavity. Tied to the physical body, made up of 7 ingredients mentioned in above, which are like so many cords to bind it, the human soul, which regards the body as its own self, is much afraid of the process of gestation being repeated in other such births, and with joined palms he entranced and extols him by whom he was cast into the womb in a tone full of agony. The human soul says, I take shelter in lotus feet which once stored the earth and bring immunity from all fear, of him who on his own sweet will assumes various forms in order to protect the universe, which has sought his protection from time to time, and by whom I have been thrown into such a condition as this, which is quite becoming of my wicked self. I bow to him who, having embraced Maya in the form of his psychophysical organism, consisting of the gross element, the indriyas, and the mind, in this womb, appears as bound by virtuous and sinful acts, and has his reality screened by Maya, who flashes on my afflicted heart as absolutely pure, untainted by Maya, immutable and possessed of wisdom which knows no break. Though bodiless in reality, I appear as clothed in a body made up of the five elements and as consisting of the indriyas, the gunas, the modes of prakriti, the objects of senses, and the ego, a reflection of the intelligent spirit. Therefore, I adore the all-knowing Supreme Person, the controller of both Prakriti, the matter, and Purusha, the spirit, whose glory can never be obscured by such wheels of the body. Having forgotten his own self under the influence of Lord's Maya, the embodied soul traverses the path of samsara or transmigration, strewn with numerous shackles of karma, having their source in three gunas, undergoing hardships of many kinds. By what other expedient then though the grace of that Supreme Being can be expected to realize his true nature? Who else than the Lord has bestowed upon me this knowledge of the past, present, and the future? For it is He who dwells in all animate and inanimate beings as the inner controller, who is no other than a part manifestation of the Lord Himself. Therefore, for soothing our threefold agony, it is Him that we adore, we who are playing the role of a jiva as a result of our karma or destiny. Fallen into a sink of blood, feces, and urine within the abdomen of another body, the body of the mother, and with his own body scorched by mother's gastric fire, this embodied soul, which is my own self, is anxious to get out of it, counting his months, the period of gestation. Oh, when shall this wretched soul be released from this confinement, O Lord? Overflowing with compassion, it is your peerless self, O Lord, that has imparted to this creature who is hardly 10 months old such incomparable wisdom. May that protector of the afflicted yourself be pleased with his own benevolent act, the bestowal of wisdom, for who can ever repay his obligations except by joining his palms out of gratitude? The other type of embodied souls, namely birds and bees, perceive or experiences by instinct only the agreeable and the disagreeable sensations in its body. I, however, endowed as I am with a human body capable of practicing self-control and other spiritual disciplines, behold that most ancient person, both without and within my heart, by the virtue of reason, conferred onto me by the self-same person, who is as manifest as my own self, referred to as I. Though living in this womb, a life full of numerous troubles, O Lord, I have no desire to get out of it and descend into the pitfall of outside world. For the Lord, your Maya overtakes the soul who goes there, and in the wake of Maya appear the false notion of I, with reference to the body, and the consequent cycle of births and deaths. Therefore, having installed in my heart the feet of Lord Vishnu, and shaking off all distraction of mind, I shall quickly redeem myself from the ocean of worldly existence with the help of reason, which is my greatest friend, so that this calamity in the shape of transmigration, entailing many rounds of gestation, may not befall on me again. Lord Kalpa went on, when the 10-month-old Jiva, who has thus resolved even while in the womb, extols the Lord as aforesaid, the wind that helps parturition propels him forthwith with his face turned downwards in order that the child may be born. Pushed downward all of a sudden by the wind, the child issues out of the womb with great trouble, head downward, breathless and deprived of memory out of agony. Fallen on earth in a pool of blood and urine discharged by the mother, the newborn babe tosses like a worm sprung from the odor, and having lost his wisdom acquired in the womb and reduced to a state of self-identification with the body, which is just the reverse of wisdom, cries loudly. Being nourished by people who do not know the mind of another, it has given something which was not intended, and the pity of it is that the child is unable to refuse it. Laid on a foul bed infested by sweat-born creatures, the poor creature is incapable even of scratching its limbs to relieve itching, much less of sitting up, standing, or moving itself. Just as smaller worms bite a big worm, even so gants, mosquitoes, bugs, and other creatures sting or bite the baby, who is most tender of skin and deprived of its wisdom acquired in the womb, cries bitterly. Having similarly gone through the painful experience of infancy and boyhood too, the man on attaining his youth flares up due to ignorance when he fails to attain his desired object and is overcome by grief. His pride and anger growing with age, that seeker of sensuous enjoyment enters into hostility and with other pleasure-seeking men for his own destruction. Clinging to the unreal, the foolish jiva of misguided intellect constantly regards the body made up of 5 elements as his own self or something belonging to him. For the sake of his body, which is a source of constant trouble to him and ever follows him, bound by ties of ignorance and destiny, he performs actions of various kinds, tied to which he goes through repeated births and deaths. If under the influence of sensually minded people engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, he delights in their ways again, he goes to hell as before. One should never cultivate the fellowship of those wicked fools, the toys of women, who are ever fidgety, have identified themselves with the body, and therefore deserve to be pitied, nay, by whose company truthfulness, purity, compassion, control over the tongue, wisdom, prosperity, modesty, fair name, forbearance, control of mind and senses, and good fortune are bolted out of existence. He who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga in the shape of God realization, or who has realized the true nature by adoring me, never cultivates the fellowship of young women, whom the scriptures declare as the gate to hell for him. Woman is a personification of Maya or illusion created by the Lord and slowly entraps man under the pretext of service. One should therefore regard her as death to oneself, even as well whose mouth is covered with grass is to an unwary traveler. Similarly, the jiva who has been endowed with the form of a woman as a result of attachment to a woman in the previous life foolishly looks upon my Maya, figuring as a man, as her husband, the bestower of wealth, pregnancy, house, and so on. A woman should therefore know that Maya as veritable death to her in the form of a husband, pregnancy, and house, etc., preordained by fate, even as the song of a hunter is to the deer. Moving from one sphere, the earth, to another, like heaven or hell, within the subtle body, which is falsely recognized as the very self of a jiva, the human soul goes on reaping the fruit of his action performed in the previous existences and unceasingly at the same time performing fresh actions, thus paving the way for future births. The subtle body, which is an adjunct of the jiva, and that which accompanies it, namely the physical body, both these go to make the psychophysical organism, which is constituted of the gross and subtle elements, the 10 indriyas, and the mind. When this organism ceases to function as a whole, it is known as death of a jiva, while its beginning of a function as a whole is spoken of as its birth. Just as when the eyes lose their capacity to see color due to the morbid affection of the optic nerve or other such diseases, the sense of sight also gets deadened that very moment, and the jiva too, the seer of both the eyes as well as the sense of sight, loses its power of sight. Similarly, when physical body, the place where the perception of objects take place, is rendered incapable of perceiving them, that is known as death, because when the physical body ceases to function, the subtle body too is no longer there to function. And when one begins to view the physical body as one's very self, that is called birth. Therefore, a man should neither view death with horror nor have the recourse of the sinness in life, nor give way to infatuation. Realizing the true nature of the jiva, he should move about in this world free from attachment and steadfast to purpose. Nay, he should relegate his body to this illusionary world through his reason endowed with right vision and strengthened by yoga or concentration of mind and dispassion, and move about unconcerned. Thus ends the 31st discourse entitled The Fate of the Jiva, forming part of the story of Lord Kapila in Book 3 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as Paramahamsa Samhita. Thank you.